From game day to signing day, breaking down every snap and all the news on Alabama's top football recruits. It's time for Crimson and Blue Chips with your host, John Garcia Jr.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into a special Tuesday edition of Crimson and Blue Chips. We are reporting from Frisco, Texas, the site of the opening finals 2018. Heavy recruiting, heavy evaluation theme on today's program. You'll see similar on Thursday. Over the next two shows, you will hear from me, of course. You will hear from 24/7 sports analysts. You will hear from several blue chip recruits committed and being recruited by your Alabama Crimson Tide as we bring you coverage from the top off-season event in the college football recruiting world. On today's show, let's hear from some five stars. How about Kayvon Thibodeaux, one of the top edge rushers in the country and the number one player on the 24/7 Sports Composite. Recently took 2 visits to Alabama. We'll hear from him. Let's hear from Brian Doan at 24/7 Sports. And let's hear from the fans' perspective for the first time on CABC. We sit down with one of our listeners and break down some of the top players here and overall for Alabama. Always a fun time of year. We record in different settings, so we apologize for any discrepancies in audio. However, you'll get the message. It will shine through, and we cannot wait to kick this thing off. We're going to do a little bit of Q&A at the end of the program, but really focus on the content here and getting you as many voices and opinions as possible on your audio authority for all things Alabama football. Always good to have this man back on the podcast, and it seems like we do it from hotel rooms just as much as we are on there remotely. Brian Doan, 24/7 Sports, ace in the hole in the Northeast, and right now in Dallas, Texas, Frisco, Texas, excuse me, for the opening. Just got some in and out, so we're feeling pretty good. Let's start there, Brian. Your assessment. How long has it been since you went to In and Out, and what was the nostalgia like tonight?
Well, it's been a few years. Last time I covered the Semper Fi Bowl, went to In and Out and absolutely love it. Based in the Northeast and in New Jersey. I think the one here in Frisco is the closest to my house. It's a pretty long commute. Definitely worth a double-double, fries, chocolate shake. Definitely a highlight of the trip for me, and a reason to look forward to next year's The Opening back at Jerry Jones World, and really looking forward to that, and watch a little football, I guess, too.
Oh yeah, that. So a lot of the best players in the country are here. Obviously, you guys know the deal by now, especially if you're an Alabama fan. It seems like it's a calling card for you guys every year. But before we jump into the guys here committed to Alabama or considering Alabama, one of the newest commitments, another guy in your region, Brian. I feel like we've gone to you so many times, and Bama's been so active from the DMV on up to New Jersey. But Kayvon Robinson, running back, not a guy we've talked a ton about. We've touched on him here and there. So why don't you give us kind of the raw, breakdown eval of Kayvon Robinson?
Yeah, there's a good reason, first of all, that a lot of people didn't hear about him. Very quiet kid. I would DM text with him, and I was, hey, where are you visiting? And he'd say, hey, I just want to keep it quiet. I don't want it out there. What officials are you going to make? Well, I don't want to let anybody know, which is cool. I mean, look, if that's what the kid wants to do, that's fine. I don't, he's 17 years old. If he wants to be a kid and keep everything private, and that's what his family wants, that's cool. That's great. Now, what's Bama getting? I know I wrote it in my eval for Bama Online, but when you look at it, he's a kid with great speed. He gets through the hole, just in a snap. He can get to the outside. He can catch the ball. He's a kid that is kind of, in one essence, it's a change of pace kind of back, but change of pace backs come with a negative connotation for a lot of people. He's somebody that can play first down, second down, third down, catch the ball for you, 3rd and 6 swing pass, run some screens for him. He can break a big play. You can move him over into the slot. To me, I look at it, he is a kid that you put him in the slot and you can drag him across the middle. It's going to be hard for people to keep up with him. He does a lot of things that, watching Alabama from afar, I don't know if they have that kid in their program that can play like that. And I think that's why it's so important. And then when you look at Bama coming up to the DMV, John, you and I spoke about this over the double-doubles tonight. But I really, when Alabama comes up to the Northeast and they really want a kid, they usually get him. And so it made perfect sense to get him and DeMarco Helms and Shane Lee and just, go down the list of the last few years.
Yeah, so that's the latest on Keelan Robinson, kind of a new approach, potentially, like you said, for Bama and in the backfield. But you mentioned two of the other guys in the DMV. Both are here, actually, DeMarco Helms as well as Shane Lee. Now, Helms, another guy we didn't talk a ton about, but we recently have. Two-way guy, we've talked about that. And he's playing both ways at points here in Texas. What have you seen from him here relative to what you're used to from the Alabama pledge?
Yeah, I wrote about him in the performers on Monday out of it, and you could see him get better throughout the day. I remember scouting him as a ninth grader. He was a long, lanky receiver. I thought that's what he was going to be, and for a long time so did he. And when you keep going back to it, the safety position is kind of new to him. He's played some corner, but he's really gotten bigger, especially in the upper body. He's the kind of safety that Alabama really likes, big, thick kid. And he's much better on balls in front of him. He's still learning, when to flip his hips and kind of run and help to the sideline on the deep balls. He's still learning his reads, and you can tell that. Even on the short stuff, red zone stuff, he had a pick, but it was a pick because somebody tipped the ball and he exactly wasn't in the best position. But on the flip side, he caught the ball and made a play, so you always, you like that. But he's just a kid that's learning it, and he's got good length, and he's just a really good kid too. And like I said, I remember he had a brother who was a pretty good player. I think he went, group of 5 or maybe 1AA. But there was always talk about, DeMarco was going to be the guy. And, one of the wonderful things about Twitter is you can go back and look things up and just how things are. I'm looking at a DM I sent them right now from March 7th, 2015, just talking about, hey, I hear you're an up-and-coming kid. He went on a visit, I think, to Rutgers with his brother, and just, he's been on the radar for a long time, but he's been kind of quiet and guarded with what he did with recruiting. But it was Bama, Clemson, Penn State. But, he went down to Bama, and he just fell in love with it down there. And look, when Nick Saban says, hey, you want to come join us, and you're sitting there with them, as you found out over the years, it's tough for kids to say no.
And just for the record, I think our listeners are intelligent enough to pick it up, but you're thinking safety for sure, right? Long term?
I am thinking safety. I spoke with one of our other guys. I said, he could probably get thicker and be a linebacker. And I said, well, Bama wants their linebackers taller, longer. Yeah, safety. Look, if for some reason it doesn't work out at safety, you can move him to receiver. I mean, you can do that, and he could be effective there. But I think when you look at a ceiling, you look at safety. And, I'll give Penn State credit on this. Penn State was the first one to say, look, we know you're a good receiver, but we really like you as a defensive back. And that's what really started this whole thing of, DeMarco being a defensive back.
Very interesting. He's definitely a guy we wanted to see in 7-on-7 Monday. We'll get another chance on Tuesday, playoff rounds of the 7-on-7 competition. An element of the opening that Bama fans are so familiar with Blake Barnett winning MVP, of course Tua winning MVP a couple years ago. Now Talia Tagovailoa there. We'll hit on him in a second, Brian. But first, another guy we really wanted to see in coverage because he's known as such a physical inside presence is the other Alabama commitment from the DMV who happens to be here, Shane Lee. I saw he had an interception Monday. What have you seen from him here just to kind of update that evaluation? Because, look, this guy's not going to be the first draft pick in terms of coverage linebackers in this class. That's very clear. But has he shown more ability in space? What do you think?
He has, you look and you realize that there's still going to, it's going to take a little bit of time as he learns a middle linebacker spot. I know I was watching one of the games at night on Monday night, and he was not out there, goal line situation where they're using some more guys in the slot and really trying to mix things up in the middle. And from that standpoint, he's got to get to that level to where he can cover and be effective. But we knew that. We knew he's got 1 year as an inside linebacker experience. He's a big, thick kid. I think Bama's going to have him cut some of the weight. And he's not overweight. I mean, he's just ripped and thick and big and strong. But, give him some more agility. He's getting a better feel when he's dropping back. His depth is better on it. He's reacting to be able to run to flat a little bit more, but it's just going to take some time with him to develop the quickness to just open up his hips and change direction to get to the flat. And also, when a tight end comes up, if that's going to be his responsibility to recognize that and be able to accelerate toward him and have the agility to kind of run with him a little bit.
Yeah, Shane Lee. And for those wondering, on the non-passing drills here, he was really good. Cat and mouse, coming downhill, kind of attacking the ball carrier, doing what he does best. He looked apart, even in this setting where, again, this isn't Joe Schmo running back from across town. This is the best of the best, blue chip on blue chip, which is why this event is so great.
Well, yeah, and I mean, we know that for the first 2 downs, if it's running, he's going to fill the gaps and be a run stopper, and he's solid, and he's thick and strong, and he understands all that. The question is, what does he need to do to be that 3rd down backer too? And that's what we're looking at in terms of development. And like I said, it's just going to take some time. He's played 1 year inside, and that's a big change for kids.
Yeah, all sorts of Bama commitment flavor here from the DMV guys that we just mentioned, the in-state guys, Pierce Quick, Christian Williams, etc. But a guy who we've talked about ad nauseum, that everybody seemingly talked about at some point. You're kind of getting your first dose here of Talia Tagovailoa. Honestly, not having his best few days as a quarterback, but you still see some of the flashes. What has been your first impression of, the kid known as Tua's younger brothers? He's going to stay in that shadow for a little bit?
He's a righty, not a lefty.
Yeah.
That's what first stuck out to me.
Well, that's true. So
that's the analysis.
You are on par.
That's the analysis that you get from me. That's some heavy stuff. What I noticed is he seems to command things very well, very poised, which isn't a surprise. Those characteristics, I'm sure, run in the family. You don't have one brother. I have a brother. I have kids. They're pretty much have same temperaments a lot when they do things. He got rid of the ball on some instances quick. On other times, he held it a little long. There were a few times, he didn't stride into a throw on one of them. It was a pick in the red zone. He threw a nice deep ball on another. But in watching him, you wouldn't know which one was the pick and which one was the deep ball that was completed. He just was really calm about it. And I thought he would be a little bit bigger. He's not, but he's also young, so there's time for that. But my inclination was poised.
Don't tell that to Nike. They got him at 6 foot. Should we not say that?
He's heightening. But for me, like I said, poised, got rid of the ball pretty quickly on the most part, scanned the fields. That's one of the things I really like about this venue here, where you can really get up close and see them from different angles. Is you can see them and watch them really scan the field on things. And there was a time he started on the right and made it all the way to his left, at least his 3rd receiver. So I give him credit for that. And it was a little warm outside when he was playing.
A little?
And he still looked calm and collective. So I liked all that stuff.
Y'all know where I'm from. It's hot. I grew up in Miami. I've lived in Alabama. This is different. I'll just leave it there. So we got your knowledge on the guys even some new guys. A little bit of recruiting. Darnell Wright, we've seen him inside and out. Bama got a shot there? Are they still in that conversation?
Listen, if you're Alabama, you pretty much always have a shot with the kid. Get him on campus, get him the right time. The interesting thing with Darnell is, Tennessee is a huge threat. His coach is a big Tennessee guy. And not that that's going to influence it, but, there's always some ancillary things that come out of that in terms of just, hey, did you see the Vols play this weekend, whatever. He told me he wanted to make some visits across the country, and he's trying to plan out where he can get to unofficially versus where he can get to officially, and he doesn't know yet. And I don't think he wants to know. He is not a kid that loves the recruiting process. I'm being nice. He does not enjoy it. He does not enjoy the interview aspect of it. He does not enjoy sitting down and planning visits. He wants to play football. He wants to get better at what he does. Talking to him on Monday, he is not a kid that's going to sit home and watch games on a Saturday afternoon. It's not who he is. And he just hasn't jumped deep into recruiting. He said he wants to decide in February, which gives him plenty of time to make decisions. And then we'll see who waits for him. But again, one thing I've learned is when kids are waiting really long and Alabama wants them, especially from this part of the country, West Virginia is a little bit outside of the DMV and New Jersey area, but they usually do a good job with being in the hunt, if not getting them. So until he tells me, no, I'm not officially visiting Bama, I think Bama has a chance.
There you go. For those who don't know how good Brian Doan is, we did not even plan this. I told him, hey, man, I got a podcast to record, and he wanted to jump in, and all of a sudden it's like your 20th or 30th or 40th appearance on the show. But each and every time, man, you bring it. We really appreciate you being a part of the CABC family. Hey, Producer Kev, get this man on the payroll next time around, huh? Thanks for being with us.
Hey, always a pleasure.
Our next guest doesn't need a heck of an introduction. If you're a college football fan, a recruiting fan, you know about the player who sits top the list for the 24/7 Sports Composite. It is the industry-based standard and really the measure of everybody in terms of the overall industry's feeling on a kid. And this kid is number one. Got a chance to speak to Kayvon Thibodeaux very briefly, just about Alabama Crimson Tide stuff, Tosh Lupoy, and even kind of the other side of the recruiting process and some things Mom wanted to know while in Tuscaloosa.
Kayvon Thibodeaux, 5-star edge rusher, number one player on the 24/7 Sports Composite rankings. Alabama, man, what comes to mind when you visit, when you think of them, when they call you, just in general?
Alabama's a powerhouse. They'll be on the top. They'll be the reigning champions for the next 3 to 4 to 5 years, I see. They got great things going, great coaches with Tosh Lupoy as the defensive coordinator. He's a great guy. Nick Saban has a great system. I don't see them going down anytime soon.
Now, you've been on campus, multiple times this year?
Yeah, I've been there twice this year.
Yeah, the most recent one, just kind of what was it like?
It was fun. I got my mom to see everything. They got to talk to my mom. My mom was able to see all the programs and everything that had to do with Alabama. She liked it. She loved it. Somehow they knew all the information she wanted, so it was perfect.
What are the mom questions? We get to talk to you guys all the time. What does mom want?
My mom doesn't talk about football. Like don't talk to her about football and what they can do for me. Just about my job, me being out, as in learning, and the alumni programs, the education system. I want to be law. I want to go into entertainment law. So she was wondering about the law programs and the different things that they have for me and the different programs and stuff.
Was Bama prepared for that?
Yeah, they were. Yeah. They were. They had a great law program that I've seen, and they showed us a couple rankings and stuff like that. For the most part, they were.
Now, was that just a visit, or did you go out there and camp a little bit?
I stayed there. For the weekend. All right. I did it for the weekend. It was pretty fun. But yeah, I'll be back this season.
Another prospect Alabama fans should kind of keep an eye on that I was able to spend about a minute and a half with that I wanted to bring on the pod was Keon Zipperer. He had some interesting things to say about Alabama, the tight end position, what Bama views with him and for him, and also just kind of what he thinks of when he thinks of the Crimson Tide.
Keon Zipperer here with us at the opening finals, man. Making some plays early on, but want to talk recruiting right quick, Bama. I mean, I know you've been up there a bunch. Just what comes to mind when you're there or when you think of Alabama?
I think Alabama, like they say, Bama is just Bama. It's hard. When you have an offer from Bama, it's hard not to go to that school.
Had you thought about jumping on board at any points? I know your recruitment's kind of been up and down.
Yeah, it's up and down, but I think about it a lot. I've been posting lately that I'm going out of state for school, and everybody been texting me, you going to Bama? I just be like, no. Then sometimes I'm like, yeah. I don't really know right now.
So you thought about committing?
Yes, sir.
If you did, what would be the reasons why Alabama would be your pick?
I mean, it's the coaching staff. I hear from Coach Locks a lot. And then defensive coach, I hear from them a lot too. They really text me a lot to show that they want me a whole bunch.
What do they talk about in terms of how do they want to utilize you? Because you're a unique athlete, height, weight, and all that, not a conventional tight end maybe. So how do they talk about utilizing your abilities?
They be like, they just going to use me at tight end, and then I'll be their nickel guy on defense too as well.
Who would you say is the biggest competition right now? Obviously, they're in the mix.
Yeah.
Who else is really kind of bugging you and on your mind right now?
Miami, Oklahoma, North Carolina, and Clemson.
Yeah, so leaving the state, legitimate possibility.
Yes, sir.
What's your reasoning behind that?
I just want to be different. But if I leave the state, I ain't got too many people around that know me, so I just start my own legacy.
When may it go down, huh?
I'm going to do it like signing day. I'm going to commit signing day.
Take your time?
Yes, sir.
Beautiful. Appreciate you. It's been a busy show, but let's make it a little more busy and bring in another new guest. Been wanting to do this for quite some time. This guy's been kind of a good gauge of you, the Alabama fan, but he really has an ear for the business. He understands what we look for, and hey, I always say it. This game is an acquired taste, and he's dove all into it, and it's really cool for me to finally bring him on the show as one of the first, probably the first fan guests. Dave from New Jersey. You guys, at some point, I'm sure, have crossed paths with him. He's down here in Dallas live with us. Well, this is recorded, but you know what I mean. Down here on business, but it happened to be when the opening was in town. So we linked up, and we're finally coming together for just a new segment. And I think it's relevant because he saw pretty much what I saw at the opening. So always good to get a different perspective. Dave, long time coming, better late than never, but finally, welcome into CABC.
Thanks for having me, John. It's been a long time, and I've been listening to this show for, I think, since the beginning, since it started a couple years back.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, it's finally nice to be on the show.
Yeah, man. So a lot going on. Obviously, I mean, there's so much going on. We're not even going to talk about the 2020 commitment that just went down. Hit BamaOnline.com for all the latest on Jason Jones. But really, I want to keep the focus here. This is what people clicked this link for, was to get information on the opening, to get opinion on the opening. And we're here to provide that. We'll begin with some Bama commitments, and I can't believe we have to talk about him so much because he's committed. But, Taulia Tagovailoa has driven a lot of conversation in the last month, whether it's what he's saying, what he's doing, where he's throwing, a combination of the three, what have you. Taulia is always in the news, it seems like. But here, it was kicking off his 7-on-7 slate today. That's a hard phrase. And it wasn't perfect, was it, Dave?
No, it wasn't. His team battled through some games today, but they came out on top, and I think they're going to start off tomorrow in the semifinals. Team Hype, as they're called at the opening, and also known as Team Bama, with most of the Alabama commits. So they'll be competing in the finals tomorrow, semifinals tomorrow.
Yeah, a lot of tournament games to go for sure. Look, we've talked about his arm a ton, right? We've talked about a lot of things. What from what you saw, what kind of didn't go wrong? And let's be clear again. And we shouldn't have to remind you, but this is the top 150 players in America, so everybody's going against prospects who are as good or better than anyone they've gone against. Believe it or not, guys, we're going to talk about Clay Webb losing more reps than he won. We're going to talk about that here in a little bit. That's the kind of event we're at. But what to you looked like the disconnect? Because, of course, Leah's going to flash. He's going to flash the arm. He's going to drive the ball down the field and get some eyes widening. But when it wasn't like that, what did you see?
He had a good day. I mean, let's start off there. I think he completed most of his passes. He had 6 touchdowns. He threw some picks, some of them tip balls, but he, for the most part, he looked good. What I did see was that he missed some of his receivers. He had some open reads that he didn't connect on deep down the field. For the most part, he hit the underneath stuff that were there. He took what the defense gave him, which is what you want your quarterback to do. But we all know that he has that arm, and he can make the throws down the field, and that's what we're here looking for, those big plays on a 7-on-7, those 40-yard seam busters, and that wasn't there today.
Yeah, they also rotated a lot today. I think the bulk of the 7-on-7 on Monday was really almost like exhibition, pretty much 50-50 split. Now, once you get into Tuesday, the final day, the day that everything is decided, then you'll ride the hot hand. So that's where Tua took all the reps. That's where Blake Barnett took all the reps. That's where last year Justin Fields took all the reps. It's where Jake Fromm took all the reps from Tate Martell a couple years ago. So we'll see how that turns out. But for the first day, for sure, it wasn't what we've become accustomed to with Leah. But again, new targets, new playbook, if you want to call it that, and obviously, new defenders to go against in a new setting. So I also think there's something to be said for the amount of work he's put in. But at the same time, Bo Nix has thrown as much as he has, and he was amazing today. Sam Howell, same thing on Monday, really good. So you can kind of see both sides of this thing. But either way, plenty of more additional eyes will be on Leah moving forward, and we'll certainly look to recap that. What do you think? I mean, you said the big plays weren't there. Was he settling too much underneath? I mean, you look at it one of two ways. Like a quarterback is a game manager, or he's careless with the football, right? Can this be a decision, something in the middle, or is this one or the other? Was he settling, or was he just playing it safe?
I thought early on when he did attempt those deep passes, some of those passes got knocked away, so he might have been deterred from going deep later on in the game and just take the easy underneath throws and work the field. He did try some deep passes that again, some of his receivers, the ball was there in the hands. Defender made a nice play on it, so could have gone either way. We'll see tomorrow how he looks.
For sure. Now, moving on to, a Bama commit we haven't been able to talk much about physically because he's been out. But Pierce Quick, back in action, fully cleared, the whole 9 yards. And we've gotten to see him go against great players the last couple of days, including, the guy who, for now, and I want to emphasize for now, 24/7 Sports has as the #1 recruit in America, Zach Harrison out of Ohio. For those who don't know, Ohio, Alabama, Louisiana, I think Pennsylvania, these states don't allow pads in July at school events. So these guys pretty much have to go against each other. And that's a good thing, and it's also a bad thing. But for Pierce, it narrowed the focus. And basically his competition on Monday was 5-star Zach Harrison and 4-star Mohamed Diabate out of Auburn High School. So he did very well. And Sunday went 2 for 2 against Harrison. And then on Monday, one more than he lost. He's been committed forever, obviously. But are we kind of like a little bit asleep on Pierce? Or is there some unknown there because of his position projection, because he can move around so much? What's the reason we don't talk about Pierce Quick? I mean, you guys are the one asking the questions, right? Why don't we talk about him as much?
I think this is someone who's been committed for a year and a half now, 2 years, and no one's had to worry about him. He took visits early on. I know he went to Clemson a couple times, but everyone knew he was going to be an Alabama signee come National Signing Day. So I think as fans, we say, hey, look, this is a kid who's going to be in our class. Let's not worry about him. Let's enjoy him on the commit list. And he's had a quiet spring, as you said. He's been out, so he missed some camps, but he attended a Nashville Elite 11 where he competed against some D linemen to make the opening finals, and he's looked pretty solid out here for 2 days. You know?
Yeah, I think, you get a sense of the versatility. He's playing tackle out here, but he's played both left and right, and he's done well at each. So that shows you a bit of, the ambidexterity, if that's a word, that he brings to the table. And I think that's where you see some of that potential. Pierce is a really good athlete. Stereotypically, 6'5" white kid, long, lean. You probably don't think that. But when you watch him, you're forced to recognize it more and more and more and more, which is great. That's what we want. But I think he's able to finally show it on the biggest stage. I mean, this is the biggest stage he can get to right now, and he's doing better than I thought he would. I thought his athleticism combined with Harrison's would be too much, but he was patient. He redirected very well against the kid. And then when Zach tried to just go all-out speed rush, Kevin Harris style, we'll talk about him too, he lost. Pierce
Zach on his ass a couple times.
Pierce was quick enough to get back there and powerful enough in that kick step to get back, to that apex point where the speed rusher has to get to before you do. It's a very simple game at times. And I thought Pierce checked 2 really big boxes so far. So we'll see him again on Tuesday, but I thought we definitely needed to spend a little bit of time on Pierce, who we all know what he's been doing as a recruiter. And yes, he's still very, 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 very confident that Alabama has some 5 stars on deck, which, even if they didn't, he probably would still be confident. But he feels really good about several names. I'll leave it there. But it's good to know that he's kind of doing what he has to do on the field now. So now that he's healthy with that shoulder, we'll see, can he start putting on some weight and look more like what we think of when we think of a 5-star offensive lineman, because it's a really good tackle class. Dave, I'm going to segue to you for our next guy. I just mentioned him, Kevin Harris. A guy who we haven't seen go against Quick, but that would be a fun matchup based on what we've seen from Quick. What do you think from Kevin?
He's fast. You could definitely see the ability, the raw talent coming off the edge, and why Bama wanted him so badly. His first step is as good as anyone here. He has a good outside move. He beat a couple tackles with that, but he still has to learn how to counter off that outside rush. So it's got some work to be done. A little light, but nothing that a good strength and conditioning program can't help.
And I think he's put on a few. I mean, not a ton, but he's over 200 pounds.
Yeah.
Solid over 200. Now, is he 230? I wouldn't go that far. I don't know if I would even go to 220, but he's solidly over 200 pounds. He weighs more than Talia Tagovailoa, I could tell you that. And at times, a few months ago, I wasn't sure. So that's positive with Harris. He was kind of boom or bust, these first couple days. He won in big ways and he lost in big ways. Like Dave said, he really needs to round out his game. And obviously, Grayson High School and the Alabama Crimson Tide is kind of the avenue to get that done at this point. Rock solid in that commitment for those curious. Let's go to some uncommitted guys, Dave, and this is where it gets fun. Let's stay with the edge rushers, actually, because a lot of people have talked about this guy nationally because he's been known for so long, but the Alabama angle with this kid is increasing, and it's palpable, and we hear it, we feel it. You just heard it here on the pod. Kayvon Thibodeaux to Bama seems as likely now than ever. Doesn't mean it's a done deal or anything close to that. This kid's we know how this kid's enjoying the process. Nobody's made more visits, I don't think, in terms of coast to coast. But the kid's got some Bama buzz, and he's backed up that 5-star ranking, I think, for the most part. How does he compare it for you, Dave, to Kevin Harris, maybe to Ayabi Anoma from last year, maybe to Nolan Smith, another 5-star this year. Where does he fit into that conversation?
He's looked good out here. I mean, he's definitely lived up to the hype, for sure. I do see that a lot of people on Twitter are comparing him and Nolan Smith, and to be honest, between the two of them, they both look really good out here.
You know who I'm taking?
I'm taking Thibodeaux. He's the longer of the two. They both look really good. It's splitting hairs with those two. Depends which school you root for.
They might be the two best players in the country.
Yeah, you could say that. It could be 1 and 2, either way. Comparing to past guys, I think Noah probably had the fastest first step out of any of these guys that we've mentioned. Kevin Harris would be 4th if you had to rank them 1 through 4. He's just the most raw out of these 4. Yeah, but Thibodeaux's look good. He's got the size, got the length. He's got the moves also. He's got an outside move, counter move. He could beat you with some power. I was impressed with that. His transition from speed to power was pretty good. He knocked some offensive tackles back. They look a little surprised when you see this guy who's known as a speed rusher coming at them. He's looked really good out here. I've been impressed.
What I like about Thibodeaux, and you guys heard him, first of all, obviously intellectual kid, he gets it. But what I like about him is, you know, when we saw him in the offseason without the pads, he's talking and he's moving around, he's stealing reps from guys, and you're like, that's cool, that's cute, whatever. Well, now the pads are on. You know, when we talk about the opening, this is the first thing I think about is the linemen with the pads on. And obviously we couldn't talk about it with Pierce Quick or Clay Webb or Ishmael Sopsher, so we won't. But with Thibodeaux being a Cali kid, he's full gear. And he's still done all of those things. Stealing reps, playing inside, and like you said, those tackles who are so worried about what we just talked about, getting to that point where you know you have to beat the pass rusher, he's not only coming underneath with finesse, but he's coming underneath with power and knocking guys off that way. And that's where you kind of start to say, all right, that, you know, it comes together. That's why he's the industry's #1 player in the country. Harrison right now, #1 on 24/7, but Thibodeaux, the composite #1 player in the country, meaning everybody combined has him as a strong #1 in this class right now. And obviously, we're talking about the best edge rushers in the country and maybe the best players in the country with Harrison, Smith, Thibodeaux. I mean, these are the premier guys. But you just like to see that movement, the ability to move up and down and compete. Him and Smith, I think, are similar in that they surprise with the physicality because they look like $1,000,000 as edge rushers, but then they come with some power as well. I think any program would be thrilled to get either one of those guys. At one point, we probably thought Smith was more likely than Thibodeaux, but Dave, do you think it's the opposite right now?
Gotta say that Thibodeaux's the more likely of the two, right? I mean, he's been to campus a couple times now, and
twice this year.
Nolan seems pretty locked in with the Dogs, so I'm gonna go with Thibodeaux as the guy in the class.
Yeah, I think he's kind of
definitely the more likely of the two.
You know, I was talking to our West Coast guys, who you guys have heard here on the pod, Brandon Huffman, Greg Biggins, and you know, every year Bama's doing something in Cali, right, or the West Coast. Everybody remembers Barnett, Jonah Williams, Najee, Tua. This year, and 2020 is going to be great in California. I can tell you that right now for Alabama. They will not strike out next year. Write it down. But in 2019, there hasn't really been the one guy. I mean, Brew McCoy put out his top 5, but Alabama's the only school in there that likes him on defense. The kid wants to play receiver, so that doesn't look good. And then there's Thibodeaux. He's kind of that other guy. And I think if Bama's going to continue this tradition of getting great Cali players every year, he becomes that much more likely. And the first guy you heard him mention, you know, was Tosh Lupoy, which if you're a Bama fan, that's the name you're waiting for him to drop, right? And it was unprompted, you know. So maybe he's playing the game and he understands the recruiting business at this point. That's possible. But you get the sense that it's not necessarily a stock answer from Thibodeaux. And, you know, he wants to come back. So, I mean, 3 visits in a year from a kid from California. I don't care about your financial situation. I don't care about who you're really looking at, that's true interest. And there's a real sense that this kid's going to play in the South. FSU feels good. Bama feels good. LSU's out all of a sudden. They were the early favorite. So we'll see. Florida's in there. It's going to be interesting for Thibodeaux if he has this sort of all SEC, ACC group, kind of like Tua did, kind of like Talia does, if he's still technically considering guys. So the Bama to California thing has literally pulled kids into the South, even sometimes before they're officially on board with Alabama. So Kayvon Thibodeaux, we haven't given him enough due here. So you heard from him. You're hearing us talk about him. Let's give him that due. And then one more guy I want to talk about with you here, Dave, is the guy who we're still asked the most about. It's the guy where every recruiting, every conversation, every evaluation conversation, every camp conversation especially really begins with. And it's Clay Webb. Zero surprise. But there has been a surprise here. I was telling one of my 24/7 Sports colleagues earlier Monday, I've seen him probably at 12 camps, and he's lost less than 12 reps at all of those camps combined. In 48 hours in Frisco, Texas, he has lost more reps than he has won. I'll get into my reasons. What have you seen? What is it? Just the competition? Because obviously we're talking about great DTs, and I know Dave, I know you love some of these cats, and so do I, and they're growing on me very quickly. You beat Clay Webb, you get my attention. Is it that simple, or what are you seeing?
He's definitely gone up in competition level, that's for sure. You can see that right away. He's made some adjustments though. You know, he's come back today a little stronger than yesterday. I think today he won most of his reps. But yeah, it's been a struggle for him. I think it's for him, when these guys get their hands on you, you feel it, right? These guys, Sopser, Ika, these guys are 300 pounds plus, strong cats. So he needs to learn how to use his hands better once they get that initial punch in. But he's still showing the same flashes. He's got good feet laterally. He's still a strong cat. Once Clay gets his hands on you, he'll win that rep. So that's what I've seen from him. What do you think of some of the reasons?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think, it's funny because when he was heavier, when he's not in wrestling shape, as we say, everybody's like, oh, he needs to lose weight, so he can be quicker and all that. And I agree in general. But then out here, you're seeing him getting overpowered a little bit, and you're like, well, dang, I wish he was back over 300 pounds, because he's probably 290 right now. So there's some give and take there. And when he's obviously in college and focusing on football, that will change. But I think the competition is a big part of it. Ishmael Sopser's probably the top defensive tackle in the country, at least in terms of upside and projection. And when he flashes, it's a lightning strike. Like, everybody sees it. It's not.
It's a wow moment.
Yeah,
sure.
it's not a slight win. It's a dominant victory, and he did that against everybody in these last 2 days. He did that against Clay. He did that against probably the guy who has as good a reputation as Clay in camps, Cardell Thomas. He did it against him just as much, if not more, than Clay. So
Jacob Bandis beat him a couple times. Jacob Bandis has beaten everybody. So
Bandis has been the star of the interior defensive lineman. So he's gone against the three toughest and biggest dudes. The smallest one is Sopser at like 325. So he's down 30 plus pounds to all of these guys, and 70 when you're talking about Ika. So that's kind of, I guess, to be expected when you get up to this point. But I'm just a little surprised about his lack of ability to redirect after losing that initial phase. Like we talk about it with DBs and receivers. A good DB can lose the stem of the route and then pick him back up, flip his hips, turn his head, get back on top of the route, squeeze it, whatever. With linemen, you're not going to always be able to get to your spot without resistance. And when he is unable to get to his spot and initiate contact and anchor first, there's an issue. So that's something that I don't think has to do with his quickness, because like you said, laterally he's good. But I just wonder what that is. Is it his hands? Is it the combination? And look, he's snapping as well. Let's not forget about that. The kid's snapping the football and then dealing with 5 stars. So that's part of it as well. So we're not talking about when he played tackle on Monday. That was just because of the whole padded thing. They need somebody else to go out there and try to block Diabate, and it would just Clay was uncomfortable. But that's besides the point. He's going to be a center clearly. But I'm just wondering about just early in the rep, because Clay is known to be so dominant with his hands, and when they're on you, it's a wrap. But in this setting against these guys, it really wasn't a 100% guarantee.
It's harder for Clay to get that initial punch, which he's so good at, right? So once he gets that initial punch at most of these camps, it's over for these guys. And here today, he was struggling to get that initial punch in, as these guys are quick off the ball. So
yeah, so you wonder just how Clay's body's going to mature and kind of where he rests at, because we've seen Clay from 280, 275 to 320 at times. So where does he settle there? Is it as simple as saying just 300? That's something for his college of choice, which is still something we have to say, his college of choice, whenever it is that time. And by the way, for the millionth time, once again, Clay is saying that he wants to wait until December. I've said it probably 15 times on this podcast, and I still kind of don't expect it, but that is still his message. That is still his plan. And, the kid loves to compete, so he's going to hit as many camps as he can. He's going to Canton, Ohio for one next week that has never went down before. It's like the first year of it. It's like some Hall of Fame camp. Maybe it'll be a big thing. I don't know. So the kid wants to compete, and then obviously it's football season next month for real. So guess what Clay Webb's not going to be doing? Picking a hat. At least he doesn't think. So maybe we should just start to believe him that December will finally be the time he picks between Alabama, Auburn, Georgia, and technically, Clemson, LSU, whatever. So just something interesting there. Clay is a different dude. You want to know how different Clay is, Dave? I was talking to his mom on Sunday here in Frisco. Very nice lady. And Clay is so different. Think about this. This is 2018 in the era of Twitter and social and texting and mobile everything and communication and constant communication, whatever. I mean, you're a New Jersey, New York guy. You know about some communication. Clay loses his phone in October. Okay? How long do you think until he had enough and needed to find it or get a new one? How long do you think? October of 2017, Clay's phone is missing. How long until a kid needs to get it?
I wouldn't wait 10 minutes, but what you're talking about this kid, 3 months?
It's stretched into 2018.
No way.
It's stretched into 2018 around signing day. It was in his wrestling bag, of all things. So in between the season and the off season,
those college coaches must have been drilling up a wall trying to reach his kid.
In between wrestling seasons, it slipped in the bag, and until it was time to ramp it up again for wrestling, he didn't have it.
He opens it up and he sees 25 minutes calls from Nick Saban.
So, again, this kid has always said December, and he is clearly not Jason Jones when it comes to social and when it comes to putting yourself out there and retweeting yourself and hyping yourself up. And that's not a good or bad thing. Just they're opposites, even though they're not very far away from each other on a map. So maybe we should start to believe the kid a little bit, as much as I still kind of don't. The evidence is starting to say, you know what? Maybe we should have. I was dying when she told me that. And she said it was 100% true. And his teammates were giving him crap. Everybody, I'm sure the coaches, like you said, like Well, Clay Webb hates us.
Yeah.
Signed Brent Key, Nick Saban, and everybody else at Alabama and Auburn and Georgia
That's
and
one way
LSU.
to put your recruitment on hold, right?
Yeah.
Losing your phone for 7 months.
So as we start to wonder why in the world is Clay uncommitted, there's some reasons there. And for those who think he is, a year-long silent commit to Bama or somewhere else, I don't know. At one point I thought that was as likely as him making an early commitment, but as we learn more about him and how he wants to handle his recruitment, I don't think Clay Webb's going to play the silent commitment game.
The coaches might not have been able to get a hold of him, but I'll tell you one guy who's right in his ear, and that's Pierce Quick. He's been all over him.
Yeah.
I think all week, right? Two of them are always together.
Look, Pierce had two missions here. One, work hard, look like the 5-star guy on the composite, and then he's done a better job than I think a lot of us expected, given the injury, given the competition level. So kudos to you, Pierce, if you're listening, but don't get big-headed. And the other side of it was, I'm going to recruit my ass off. And he's focused on a handful of dudes, but whether it's in Frisco, Texas, down in Panama City, or wherever they went for spring break with Paul Tyson, whether it's at a Bama camp or an Auburn 7-on-7, Publix, or 7-Eleven, Pierce is going to be all over Clay about Alabama. Now, will that be the determining factor? Probably not. But when nobody can reach the kid and there's a lack of consistency, clearly, with communicating with him, something like that can prove bigger than otherwise. So I think that's an important point. That's another thing, Dave. I thought y'all would ask more about Pierce Quick because he's, recruiting coordinator. Jody Wright's gone, so he's
taking over.
He's kind of the guy, right?
He's been very, on social media, on Twitter, he's just all over that, right? Every time there's a new commitment, he's always tweeting at the kid. He's definitely the class leader for sure. Him and Paul Tyson, I would say.
Yeah, and then under the radar, it's Leah. On the low, it's Talia.
Different personality than Tua.
Talia's the Jalen Hurts of this class in terms of, which is ironic, in terms of how he's recruiting, and then Pierce is the Blake Barnett / Tua. Hey man, #RTR. Come on down. I actually think Paul has been influenced by Pierce. Like, Pierce has rubbed off on his teammate, like, okay, this is how you do it? Like, Paul's a pretty laid-back dude, pretty relaxed cat, but I think that tandem effort is going to be pretty important for Clay and for a lot of guys here down the stretch. But yes, ladies and gentlemen, Clay lost some reps. But he's fine, and I'm sure LSU, Clemson, Bama, Georgia, Auburn, Huntington, Faulkner, South Alabama, Troy, UAB, Canadian colleges, and international schools would still take Clay Webb.
I think so.
Yeah, I think his spot is pretty good right now. But the Bama offensive line recruiting situation is getting more interesting by the day, so that's still something to monitor, but that conversation still does begin with Clay Webb. Let's switch gears to Q&A. Going to do a little bit differently today, and I know you hear different audio. We're all over the place, so I apologize for that. But just going to grab a few questions. Dave's still here with us, so he's going to help us out, and we'll start it actually via email, a very relevant question for us here at the opening. It comes from our buddy John Christopher Jackson. Howdy, John. Hope Dallas is great. Or Texas. Yeah, we're technically in Frisco, I guess. What's the percentage you put on George Pickens in this class? You've been around him, seen the body language. So do we get him or not? In Hank's interview, he said the magic words I like to hear recruits say, quote, they win. And with him from Hoover, I'm starting to get a good feeling here. Also, I love the all-purpose back out of Kentucky. We'll leave that rest of that for another day, as George Pickens is always a popular topic. Dave, I mean, I'll let you start, actually, because I think everybody pretty much knows where I'm at with George. And by the way, he's looked
like everything we've always said he's looked like out here. Amazing ball skills, physical. Nobody's made more contested catches. But just the whole Bama angle with him, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking we got a chance. I know he said that Bama getting late into the picture with him via an offer wasn't a deal breaker, so that's a positive. In terms of his play, he's been really good out here. He's got a great wide receiver body, long arms, big shoulders, 6'4", catches everything. I mean, that guy's got a huge catch radius, one-handed catches, you name it. He's doing it all out here. The one thing I see going against Bama is that he's very tight with Bo Nix, and they have a good chemistry going.
Yeah, they're on the same team here too, for the millionth time. And Cam Newton was out there Monday for the millionth time. But yeah, that's gonna be interesting to see if he kind of goes against that grain. But the kid's bold. There's no doubt about it, and he like you said, and like John said in the email, I mean, he keeps talking Bama. He keeps talking about other schools in general. He told me he still wants to take that Michigan visit. He still wants to take that Oregon visit, Georgia, Florida State. And obviously he was, I don't know if we've said this enough, but he was at Bama again last week for that 7-on-7. And briefly spoke to Saban, briefly spoke to Mike Loxley and Brent Key. So this thing has some legs, but for George it'll be more of what he does more than what he says, I think, going forward. But look, Bama's going to stay on him. He's an in-state kid. He's a Hoover kid, and he's arguably the best receiver in the country right now. He's helping his case as much or more than any other receiver out here, and this is for that position that's kind of what this is about. This is where a guy can hit the next step. We saw it with Calvin Ridley. We've seen it with a bunch of dudes. Jerry Jeudy had a great week out here a couple of years back. This can kind of propel you. Devontae Smith, got that 5th star in the spring, held on to it with a great run at the opening that year with Tua. So it's a big week for George, and some of that stuff feels pretty similar. And
he knows he's needed in this class, in terms of Bama's looking for a big wide receiver, and he fits that mold. So he knows he's wanted, he knows he's needed, and Bama's going to stay on him until the end.
No doubt. Let's go to Twitter now. Our buddy Laquan, at Laquan1, chiming in, and we'll just answer a couple more here to kind of get you on your way. We've got a ton to unload. We've still got a whole nother day, the final day, the most important day of the opening, so we do want to save some juice for our Thursday show. But Laquan's had a couple of really good questions here into the pod, again, at CABC Pod on Twitter. He's starting with the defensive backs. This is a great DB class. There's good corners. There's good safeties. And he's wondering about, their overall game and maybe my favorite and our favorite. We'll get Dave in here too. Laquan's going with Dax Hill, and that's – how could you go against that? That's a safe pick, a solid pick. Dave, we were watching the Fastest Man Sunday, and we both thought Dax won it. It was kind of controversial. They gave it to the 2020 kid. But a safety even being in that conversation and theoretically winning it, I don't know. Did Landon Collins win it? I mean, it doesn't happen a lot. That's my point. And he looked at that day, and he's looked at in 7-on-7, so that's a good pick, Laquan. For me, favorite DB, Keir Elam's growing on me. Bama hasn't offered yet, I don't think. They haven't really jumped in. I think they're kind of conceding there. Tyreek Stevenson's been really good out here. Akeem Dent's been really good out here, kind of the South Florida DBs. Jordan Battle, another South Florida DB, going to Ohio State. Dax Hill's a good pick. I like Nick Cross a lot. You kind of put me on him a little bit earlier.
Nick Cross is a player.
Yeah, it's a good group.
Physical, well put together.
Yeah, you guys heard Brian Doan on DeMarco Hellams. He's shown some of that, but he's not where these guys are today. But obviously his ranking, his situation is about tomorrow more so. than today. I'm still going through it. I can't lock down a favorite. I mean, last year it was so easy with Surtain. And then in-state, a guy like Jalen Armour-Davis, guys that I've known forever. This year, it's kind of like, a couple things changed my mind. So I'm going to hold off, Dave. I'll give you the floor.
I think for me, cornerback-wise, Derek Stingley, who's committed to LSU, has looked really good out here. Big kid, six foot tall, 185, runs 4.4. He's played really well out here. And I still love Dax Hill. I think he's a sure thing. Kind of reminds me of Minkah Fitzpatrick.
Uh-oh.
Just said it. Future top 10 pick maybe. 4.4 speed. He's got length, 6'2", a little taller than Minkah. He's about 185 right now, so he's got the size, he's got the speed, he's got the coverage skills. So Dax Hill's my favorite safety in this class, and Derek Stingley's my favorite cornerback.
It's a good group. All those guys have kind of backed up where kind of they already sit. Stingley, Chris Steele, a couple other guys have all been good. We mentioned Battle, Stevenson. I mean, they've all looked like the best.
What do you think of Christian Williams?
Yeah, that's a good question. Christian is a guy we've changed course on a little bit, just in terms of where we think he fits. A year ago, when we were first hearing about him, the Jalen Armour-Davis comp was so natural. Same size, long, fluid, more finesse guys, both mobile guys, both wear number 4 if that matters. But Christian
can play all over the secondary.
Yeah, can play corner or
star.
safety. But as it's progressed, Christian's put on some really good weight. No disrespect, Jalen, if you're listening, but I know Jalen is not near 200 pounds right now, and Christian is right about there already, ahead of his senior season. So he's maturing and progressing physically more. So I think that move or potential move to safety or a star combo DB, I think he's firmly in the combo DB group, like we talked about with Shaheem Carter a few years ago. Even Hootie Jones, when he was coming out, a lot of people thought he was a corner, and he played a lot of corner in high school. We were talking more combo DB safety. I think Christian Williams is shifting that way, and it's not because he can't cover. He's just adding weight. He's playing more physical, and he's just showing a little bit more safety traits at this point. And also, that's where Bama has the need. That we all know what kind of corners they brought in last year, and we talk about Job as the combo guy from that class. No disrespect to Christian, but he's not in that stratosphere with Josh Job. Josh Job, I think, can be an NFL corner if he really puts his mind to it. I don't know if Christian has that ceiling today. And out here, he's looked good, but he's looked more like a combo DB to me.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, so it's a great DB class. It's one of those, like we said, with wide receiver a few years back in that Judy, Devonta Smith, Henry Ruggs class. No matter what the final tally is, it should be really good for Alabama, but it seems like there's some twists and turns ahead at that position. But Laquan, thanks for bringing it up. Always willing to talk DBs here on the pod. We'll stick with you for our final question today. Now you're worried about the offensive side of the ball, and this is a really good question, really relevant. Laquan's wondering about offensive tackles. Which ones are still takes with likely only one spot left? We hear the most about Darnell Wright, but I've been hearing good things about Evan Neal and Wanye Morris on the field. Could they make a run at getting Neal recommitted or flipping Morris? These are great, relevant questions, Laquan. I know you've been on the timeline checking out some things from the opening, because Evan Neal is probably the biggest stock-up offensive lineman. Wanye Morris has always been under 5-star consideration to some degree. I think he's inching very close to that. And conversely, Darnell Wright has actually been inconsistent. It's a great tackle group, just like it's a great DB group. And other guys have looked much better at times, not only Neal and Morris, but Kenyon Green. Pierce Quick had a very good Monday as well. Let's not forget about him. So the tackle conversation in the rankings is going to be fun as well. But I think there is one spot left for sure. They want a true tackle. Pierce is the utility guy. They want a true tackle. And Morris had long looked like that, as has Darnell Wright. Both of those guys, fairly similar body types as well. But I just don't think they got a shot with Morris at this point. He was on campus. He camped.
a little bit of scoop there. It wasn't really public, but he did come with his Grayson teammates. Of course, Kevin Harris committed to the Tide. He camped, and a source told me on Monday that he was great. He might have been the best offensive lineman there, and somebody close to this source is an offensive lineman. So I think that tells you a lot about Morris's progression. But by all indication, he's really locked in with Tennessee. I think if anyone flips him, ironically, it might be Auburn at this point. So that's kind of a unique situation to monitor. So I think Evan Neal's the guy to focus on. He's kind of the new, the flame re-sparked, if you will. Really worked on his body, Dave. He looks better now than I've ever seen him, and we've literally covered him since he was a freshman because he committed to Bama for like 10 days.
Yeah, everyone thought he was going to be a guard. He's 6'7", 390, right? And no one thought he had a chance of playing tackle, and here he is, shows up at the opening, and it's like, who's this kid, right? And he's looked really good feet, and he's got great length at 6'7", and he's got kind of DJ Fluker type size.
Okay,
6'7",
I'm good with that.
So.
And Bama fans, are you good with college and emphasis on college DJ Fluker? I think 99.9% of listeners would take that. And yeah, I mean, when a guy's committed once, and it's so quick and kind of abrupt, I think it could, I don't know, that could foster something else. It's not like it was a bad divorce or anything where, Bama didn't drop the kid, anything like that. This was a kind of, I'm a freshman and I'm really good, and I thought I should have jumped on the Bama offer because, Bama's the best, Bama's the champs. And everybody understood when he backed off. But now the race for him is going to be as heavy as ever. Really, it's just Bama and Miami, I think. Florida State, Florida, a couple other schools are in there technically, but it really does feel like either he goes down south to play for Richt or he recommits to Alabama, and I have no doubt that Bama has been consistent with him. He was on campus in June, and they've really never slowed down completely on the kid. It was just like you said, Laquan, we were hearing so much more about Darnell Wright, who's also returning later this month, by the way, for the second cookout. So this tackle conversation is going to go on for quite some time. But if I had to guess right now, I think Neal is more likely than Wright, and certainly than Morris for the class. Is this kind of one of those, Dave, where any one of the three works?
I think it might be first come, first serve. And I know Evan Neal is very close with Trey Sanders, a certain running back.
Oh, yeah, that guy.
Fans might want. So can they be teammates on the next level? So maybe a package deal, maybe not, but it doesn't hurt.
It doesn't hurt.
It doesn't hurt to get one, right?
Yeah.
And work on the other.
Doesn't hurt to get more IMG kids.
Yes.
Although don't ask about DeAvie Hammond because that's not going to happen.
That recommitment will not.
Also, don't ask about Brendan Gant. He laughed today when I asked him about Alabama. I don't know if Alabama's talked to him since he decommitted. I can't confirm, but I don't think there's been a ton of communication there. I think his Florida State commitment is inevitable at this point. But anyway, a lot discussed, a lot more to discuss. So we'll cap it here for this Tuesday edition of Crimson and Blue Chips. I want to thank Brian Doan, all of our blue chip recruiting guests, and our newest guest, Mr. Dave here. I think you're going to hear from him a little bit more. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed bringing him on. Thanks for joining us, Dave.
Thank you for having me. Roll Tide.
God bless, guys. Garcia out.